Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Fiends podcast where we discuss everything fantasy. I hope my voice is not as deep as last time, which Andy has made me very, very aware and sensitive. Yeah, exactly. We're I'm Stevie Collier and I am author of the upcoming Four Territories, and it is going to be up for pre-order soon, and we are here with Jessica Fry, who will know something about that as well, because she is going to have a series uploaded soon. And I didn't forget about you, Andy, even though you're rude to me. We are also here with my co-host, Andy Peliquin, author of the Last Beast Solari series and that Thief Woman book he writes about.
Yeah. And I was going to say, Steve, you always start the podcast with all things fantasy, and I feel like you're going to end up saying and all things fiendish too, and you never do. So it's sort of like a disappointment. Not that you should, but in my head that's how it goes, and so I'm always a little bit let down.
I like that though. I actually really do. Everything fantastical and fiendish. Why haven't I been saying that? Why haven't you told me this sooner?
Good.
Yeah, see, Jessica thinks so.
I can't be the one to pick on you every time. I feel like our guests need to be the ones to do that.
That should go in their packet that they get before the show. Please pick on Stevie as much as possible.
Bring at least 3 slams to put Stevie in his place. And there you go.
Yes. He's way too cocky of a new author. It's not like he's already scared as it is. I mean, he deals with all these authors like the awesome Jessica. Jessica, am I going to call you J.M. Butler or Jessica today?
Just call me Jessica. J.M. Butler is just the name I write by. But, I mean, if you wanted to call me Jay, you could. But I respond best to Jessica.
Okay, Jessica it is. And it looks like for anyone who is listening and not viewing, she has like this very like artsy literature background. She's like in front of a fireplace, it looks like, with a thing of books to her side.
A non-working fireplace, I should add. I mean, if we need to get warm, we're not going to do it, but we can always escape out the chimney in the event of a need.
So, according to Andy, we'll just get warm from the awesome erotica that I write. Right, Andy? The awesome granny erotica?
That's right. That's Stevie's next project after the 4 territories. Fantasy-based granny erotica.
Yeah.
A new genre.
Hey, I could start that new niche.
There you go.
There you go.
I was going to say, this episode has started off so cheery already, and it's very quickly going to not be so cheery. It's going to fall down. It's going to descend when we start talking about depression. And y'all discuss that it's something like it's Depression Month. It's what month?
Oh, Month of Fear?
Month of Fear. Okay.
That's what I call it, but it's a little bit longer than that.
Oh, so this is something you created.
Mm-hmm.
Month of Fear. Okay, you want to explain that a little bit?
Well, the Month of Fear is something that I started doing back a few years ago because I started dealing with depression. There were a lot of challenges that I was facing. I had severe and weeping eczema at the time, and it was over a large part of my body, so it felt like I had...
Severe and weeping eczema.
It looks like somewhere between open raw blisters and a dog chewing on you and a burn. So it feels like raw open blisters everywhere. And obviously that wasn't something that most teens and kids were friendly towards. So I got very acquainted, even as a homeschool kid, with terms like, leper and two-face, because for a little bit, two-face.
No, I was like, Jesus. Like,
oh, yeah, they were
so mean.
They can be very vicious. And so what ended up happening with it was obviously that started demoralizing me, and we were trying to find a cure for that. Thankfully, it's gotten under control, and then eventually I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which brought about a whole host of other challenges. And I noticed that when the depression started getting really, really bad, I'd start moving into this stagnating pool of just not really challenging myself and becoming crippled with fear. So what I would do is just take one thing that made me very uncomfortable or afraid, and I'd make myself do it each day. And it didn't matter how big it was, and sometimes on some of those days they were very, very small things. And after I got that done, I felt a little bit better. And so I decided to see what would happen if I did this for a whole month. And it wasn't anything enormously productive, but I did it for a month and then I just continued to do it, and it helped pull me out of that slump.
Wow, and it's so weird for you to be saying all this stuff because you're one of the nicest people we've met on this show so far. Everyone's nice, but you've been super nice, and you're wearing this bright and colorful T-shirt, and you radiate confidence. So it's hard to believe that that was ever a part of your life.
It still is. It's kind of the funny thing is that I learned that depression doesn't look like what I thought it would. I actually didn't know I had it until I was talking to the doctor about it. So it turned out to be very, very distinct from what I expected.
I have a quick story about that, and you reminded me of it. I knew this girl in French class whenever I was, anyway, she was afraid of ants. She was terrified of ants, and it's not like that's compared to your story, but what she had to do was she would pick up an ant every day, and she'd pick up more ants, which is a horrible idea, right? Just the desire to pick up these ants. And one day in a controlled environment, I don't know where she came up with this or how she did it, but she got covered in ants, head to toe, and then they washed it all off of her. The next day, she went and got a trail of ants tattooed on her arm. And
that's amazing.
I really wanted to say, like, isn't it logical to be afraid of ants? Like,
they can eat you. Yeah,
but I guess you just had like this super crazy fear. And you doing the step-by-step thing reminded me of that story.
It's really effective.
Well, it seems like we're going to get into this topic pretty quickly. Andy, do you want to do a word of the day?
You know, let's focus on this because the word of the day is going to deviate us from this. But I wanted to comment on that. One of the articles that an article that I read for a blog post was about the 5 basic fears that all humans share. Like all of the fears that we have stem from these 5 basic fears: extinction, the fear of ceasing to exist; loss of autonomy, not being able to move or anything like that; separation, like fear of abandonment, rejection, being alone; ego death, which is humiliation, shame; and then mutilation, the fear of losing any part of our precious bodily structure. And this is where the fear of insects comes from, where our body is being invaded by bugs or by snakes or by spiders or things like that. That's the problem, is being bitten or being, creepy crawlies inside. And so this fear, this instinctive fear of bugs or insects or whatever it is one of the 5 primal fears that all human beings share.
I would buy that.
Jeez, go ahead.
One of the more exciting things I did get to do for part of this, I was in Virginia Beach, and one of the scenes in my story has my protagonist holding a scorpion on her hand.
Okay. And
I am very much afraid of spiders and scorpions, all of those things. And I had been working through that, and it turned out I was interviewing someone on how do you transport scorpions through the mail system. And yes, certain types of scorpions can be sent through the mail. And he let me hold one, which was absolutely fantastic. And then I had an incident with a jumping spider that sent me back all the way to the beginning. But getting to hold that scorpion was probably one of the highlights of that month of fear. And although I should say, I don't recommend doing that without someone like my friend who knew what he was doing with it.
I get it now. The month of fear was you taking every day to do something you were afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So what kind of things did you do? Even, big, little, whatever. What sort of things did you do to conquer your fears?
Well, like I actually have, I have a fear of talking on the phone. Used to. Now I'm pretty well over that. I had a very big issue with my picture being taken. Didn't want to see myself filmed, didn't want to talk on a camera. So in a sense, doing this podcast, I'm actually pretty nervous right now, but I've done a few of these, so that was part of today's. And then another was talking to a stranger. Then I mentioned like holding the scorpion was a big one. Another one was I did sign up for trapeze lessons, but they got canceled due to an equipment failure. So glad they canceled that.
Equipment failure, the one thing you don't want.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good.
But so there were little things, and then marketing. I actually really, really hate marketing and cold calling. Like
Mhm.
cold calls will just put my stomach in knots. And
Yes.
trying new things that I will fail on almost assuredly. So sometimes the goal for the day would be go and do this and fail at it. But you have to get started to even fail at it. And sometimes I would get a little farther than I thought I would.
That sounds a lot like sort of like imposter syndrome, which is something that a
Mm-hmm.
lot of authors deal with. It's a concept describing individuals who are marked by an inability to
Mm-hmm.
internalize their accomplishments and a persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud. I know that I have
Yes.
and do sort of get that, you know, like when I found out that my book was second place in the Reader's Favorites Awards. It's hard to internalize that. Like I did good with this book. It's just something happened and it's separate from me. You know, there's a lot of authors who, even after years of writing, it's still difficult for them to accept, yes, I write well. Yes, I tell stories well. People want to hear what I have to say.
Right.
I think that Stevie and my case, we're the opposite. We're like people, you know, people are going to want to hear what we have to say, which is why we started this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I always tell people, my side is, I think the reason why people would want to listen to this, our market that we're hitting is people who like fantasy books, but in the very, very small amount that want to learn about writing fantasy, or people who love to read fantasy and they want to learn to write fantasy. What I bring to the table is I started from absolutely zero. I emailed an author that I really liked. I told him that, hey, I have this book that I'm finishing up. And Andy was very receptive to it. And I learned from ground zero. I've listened to every book out there. I've read almost all the copy for book marketing out there. So that's what I bring to the show. And I wanted to comment on something you said, Jessica, about the marketing fear. And it's so weird you bring that up. We actually had a class on marketing at my school, and I was confused that people would be afraid of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was a business major, so I just grew up, you know, business was the talk. We talk business at the table. And that can be rude to people, I guess, but we just enjoy, it's fun. It's fun for us. So when the slides came up, fear of marketing,
Mm-hmm.
people were like, actually, they seemed receptive to it, and I didn't understand why it was such a big deal. And then when people actually had to go up and we were doing these exercises, I would say most of them were very, very uncomfortable. Even if it was with people they knew, they did not want to do a hard sell, and they were even uncomfortable with the soft sale. And so I totally see where you're coming from now. Is that a dragon ring?
Yes, this is my dragon ring. It is one of my fantasy jewelry. I hate small talk, and when I wear this, I never have boring small talk. Here.
That is so cool. Here I am talking boring business talk, and then you have this dragon ring.
Marketing is terrifying, but I think it goes back to what Andy was talking about with imposter syndrome. It comes down to, but what if I'm not good enough to actually deliver on what I'm promising that I can give the audience? And not to mention, I think we've all been victims of buy my book and just, you know, buy that, and getting added to dozens of sales group on Facebooks. But like, you know, you grew up seeing the positive side of marketing and business. And so for you, it's probably more natural to know how to separate those two. You're like, well, I'm not going to do this. And, you know, really there's no excuse for why I shouldn't be able to divorce those two concepts. But it's just going to take practice.
You know what I'm seeing, though, is that with ebooks, hard selling is never really a good idea. Especially on your social media platforms. And I'm sure Andy's not, you know, every day tweeting out, buy my book, buy my book. It's just a bad idea. I think the only time and place that hard selling is okay is in an organized email push, where people who have signed up for these emails know they're going to be, you know, have pitches thrown at them. I don't want to bore the podcast with business talk, because I do it all day and it's in my brain, and but so today we are discussing this fear month and how we can implement stuff like imposter syndrome, depression into our fantasy novels. Is that correct?
Sure, that, and how authors can deal with it in their own life as well.
Instead of looking at it as how we as authors can use it in our writing, I almost see it as a challenge for us as people to do something. I wanted to say, Stevie, I challenge you between now and next week to do one thing that makes you scared. And I'm going to try to do something too. I've been thinking, what's something that I'm afraid of that I can do. I'm not really the fearful type. I often find myself saying, oh yeah, I'll do it, and then forcing myself to do it. But I'm trying to think of things that I'm afraid of. And I know there's a lot of things that are like subconsciously fearful. So
you know what?
Take that challenge.
I'm becoming more introverted with every day that I've decided to be a part-time author. I say part-time, but most of my time goes to my writing. And I've noticed that I lose more energy when I'm around people, but I gain more energy when I'm by myself. And I didn't know you could do that. I used to be so extroverted, like the description of it. And even my brother, I think 2 weeks ago, he said, wow, why don't you want to do this? I was like, there will be people there. They're going to want to talk to me. I know there's more definitions to being an introvert, but I'm definitely seeing some signs as being a writer more and more. But something that scares me, the reason why I say that is because I have a baby shower coming up this Saturday, and there's going to be a lot of people there, you know. So, and I know coming back, I won't have the stamina, the mental stamina to sit down and write. Well, I'll find it somewhere. But, you know, I'll just be a little bit more drained than before I became a writer. Does that make sense?
That makes complete sense.
I had no idea you could switch between the two.
Well, I think it also happens that when you're pouring yourself out into these stories that you're writing, you're using up energy that otherwise you could have spent on people. And, you know, I can't remember who said it, but it was that a writer is a world with thousands of people trying to get out. So technically, you've got lots of people with you.
Oh, that's really good. I wish you knew who said that. I'd like to.
I can Google that.
So is your ring part of your fear month where people have to talk to you about it?
Oh, no, this one was actually just fun and more of a practical thing, but I could have. It's Victor Hugo. A writer is a world trapped in a person.
Okay.
Yeah, this was just something. I was actually going to a writing conference, and writers in general are a little bit introverted. And if you can get them talking about their stories, it'll go fairly well. But there were readers and writers there, so how do you know which one? Like, well, we're going to do Dragon Ring, and I had some other fun fantasy jewelry and stuff. And that opened up some great avenues for conversation, just breaking the ice.
What convention? What conference?
That was the WatCon conference. It was in New York City last year.
Wow, I really thought you were going to say the Smarter Artist Summit, which is coming up, but I don't have $500.
Yeah, no, I don't have $500 for that one either, but that sounds like it'll be pretty good.
Yeah, it would be really, really cool to do. Andy, about the whole pick one thing you're afraid of, why don't you start spitting me out some ideas?
Well, I don't know. That's the thing, is I'm trying to think of things that I'm afraid of, or that I
don't like anchovies.
Yeah, but there's a difference between not liking something and like actually being afraid of something, you know?
Okay, yeah.
If it's something like you're hesitating to talk to a friend about an uncomfortable topic,
Mm-hmm.
or you are worried that something that you've written isn't good enough, or I don't know, just find something that sort of gives you that tightening, that clenching in your stomach.
Mm-hmm.
You know that's fear, and then do it. That's sort of how I am with people. You know, I'm not very good at talking to people. I know it sounds crazy given how much I talk on these things, but
I think I have. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
With people, it's very, very nerve-wracking for me. So not to the point of like anxiety, but it's always difficult to find something in common. So then over the course of my life, I've done a lot of sales jobs, and so I've forced myself to talk. And now I don't think that I've conquered the fear, but it's easier to sort of shut off that part of my brain that's fearful. So like Jessica said, doing the things that you're afraid of sort of diminishes the fear.
You know what? I got something it's gonna blow your mind. Jessica, hold on to the edge of your seat.
All right, I'm ready.
Hold on to your dragon. We were just talking about imposter syndrome, but I couldn't figure out a way that I could compare to what y'all were talking about. I may have one. I don't like telling people that I'm a fantasy author when they ask me what I do.
Oh.
I don't like it. I feel like I'm not good enough. And is that not what y'all were talking about?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't like telling people.
I still have a hard time, like when I'm at writers' conferences, I'm still nervous talking to other authors because I've only been doing this for two years, right? August 2015, I published the first book. So I've just over 2 years of doing this.
You have a lot
when
of
I
books.
look at these authors who've been doing it for, 5 years, 10 years, they've got 10 books, 30 books, 50 books. It's like, it's hard to say, yeah, I'm an author too, to stand up and take pride in. But that's something that I think all of us fight with, and it's sort of that imposter syndrome, getting over that fear.
When have you paid your dues?
Yeah, whether
Never.
you have whether you have one book or 20, be proud of it. Like, I think as authors, we're so used to putting out books and stories that it stops being an accomplishment. Someone who's never written a book or who's never completed a book, it's like, wow, you've actually done something.
Yeah.
And so remembering that you've not only finished one book or one short story, but 2 or 4 or 5 or 10, that's something that helps you to swallow your fear and say, well, I've got something to offer, even if it's just some words that I put together in a book.
Andy, I gotta say, like, I know like this podcast is supposed to be entertaining for other people, and I gotta say that actually really helped me. So you're finally useful. Yeah, I if you're listening or viewing, you should go back and listen to that again. I think there's a lot of truth to that. Maybe I do need to put a little bit more confidence behind me. Because Andy was with me when I got my very first email, which would have been a review on Amazon if the book had been on Amazon, telling me they didn't like the book.
Oh.
They finished it. They didn't like it. They didn't give me a reason why. They just said, I didn't like it, and I won't be reading any more of your books. I'm like, you dick. You did have to email me for that. But it really it got me ready for what you're going to get bad reviews, right? And it definitely, I want to say it hardened my heart, even though it'll still hurt. I'm ready, because if people will take the time to write a nasty email like that, and it was nasty in my opinion, they're going to do it on Amazon reviews for sure when money's involved.
People can be really strange when it comes to reviews. I mean, like, to me, one of the funniest bad reviews I got, this is, of course, high fantasy. It says, totally unbelievable. That's all.
That's it?
That's it. I'm thinking,
that could be positive.
Too unbelievable and too short. I've gotten a few reviews like that, and I'm going, well, I did tell you up front that it was a novella, and you paid 99 cents. So it's 35,000 words. And as for unbelievable, yes, there's a banshee. There are all sorts of things in it that aren't part of real life. So it is hard. But
35,000 words is longer for a novella.
It's on the upper end of a novella. Like 40,000 supposedly is when you hit the what can be categorized as a novel. But I felt better calling it a novella than a novel, because then people would be much more likely to say, oh, I don't care for this length. But, the other thing that really helped me when I was working through a lot of these issues, and on some days it was just writing about what I wanted to write about. And I have a huge backlog because I didn't do a good job of keeping up with edits and production schedules and such like that. But one of my fears was, this story has been told before. I mean, how long have people been telling stories? They've been telling them for centuries, and there's only, depending on who you ask, 7 or 9 plots in the world that we can use, essentially, with various accessories and such. And it was just when it started to settle in that you're right, it's all been told before. And whenever someone says this is totally unique and has never been done, it's like, well, you're probably saying more about what you've read, and you're focusing more on a certain segment of literature, because somewhere in the world probably been done. But it's never been told by us, by the individual author. We each have something that we can say in our own way, something to add to the conversation. And when you pour your heart into it, when you craft it to the best of your ability, even if it's not perfect, it's still something unique, and it still matters, and it needs to be out there.
You know what? Hey, Andy,
Yeah.
Maybe we should download this MP3 and like turn it into like a little mini self-help book. Because
we can just call it the wisdoms of Jessica, and there we go.
Hey, it's pretty. No, wisdoms of Jessica and Andy, because you definitely, you know, y'all are giving some really good advice. Mine is keep a lot of protein in your diet, reduce your carbs if you're trying to lose body fat, depending on some sources. Anyway, what? I had something to say. Andy, please.
While you think of it, I wanted to say the same thing, that when I released Thief of the Night Guild last month, no, 2 months ago, July. As I started working on the final book, Queen of the Night Guild, I kept thinking, okay, I'm telling the story of this thief girl, but how many other thieves are there out there? You know, how many other, like the different houses of the Night Guild, it reminded me of Divergent a lot. And then all of the other young adult novels who have that similar, you know, division of things. And it was like, okay, am I really telling a story that's unique, that's new, that's fresh? And that's something that I wrestle with every time I start a new story, or even as I go back to old stories. And it's definitely something that I'm sure a lot of authors wrestle with. But at the same time, putting your own unique spin on things, or introducing your, you know, these situations, I've found what really helps me to feel like I'm making progress as an author and a person is tackling these things, especially when it comes to these disorders, whether the emotional disorders, neurological disorders. I feel that they're not done enough. So if I can focus my stories on these things, then that's one way that I stand out from the crowd. And that's sort of built my confidence, because, you know, these short stories or even these novels that I've written, people are like, oh, wow, this really resonated with me, or I found this really awesome that you touched on the subject that doesn't get dealt with. So that's sort of my way of building my confidence. Even if I feel like, okay, this badass thief girl has been in 20 stories in the same genre, at least my badass thief girl does this that no one else does. You know, sort of building your confidence in that way and stretching myself as an author.
Well, I noticed that you put your book in LGBT, and I know there is LGBT in your book. Would that be an example of what you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely not something that I'd considered tackling before last year. And as I was writing it, I was thinking, like, why not? Why wouldn't I tackle this? And the reasons behind this relationship is another very sensitive issue. But I felt like, okay, so I tackled this one issue. I did a lot of research into it. I treated it with respect. I tried to do it as accurately and respectfully as possible. So let's take another step. Let's go another step forward. Let's up the ante, so to speak, and see what would happen if I added this into the mix. And so far, the reception has been positive. It has, you know, I've been very concerned about backlash over this particular relationship because of the origin behind it. But then people have said that they appreciate the fact that this is done respectfully. And so I want to like look for a new way to stretch myself, a new subject to touch on or something. And I conquering that fear really helped me to overcome a lot of my fears as an author, just doing it.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's really the only way through the fear is straight through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I just realized that I did not tell our listeners and viewers what J.M. Butler, aka Jessica Fry, has written, and it is a series, or a series called Two Rock Chronicles.
Mm-hmm.
And the first book is going to be Identity Revealed.
Mm-hmm.
And when will that be ready?
That should hopefully be ready November 13th. I'll actually be releasing the first 2 volumes of it, Identity Revealed and Enemy Known, and I've got some novellas. One's going to be coming out this weekend, and
Nice.
They're going to be leading up to it. This is the world I've been working on for years and years. So,
do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Well, let's see. I'm going to try and condense it. I've been practicing this.
Yeah.
So essentially, this is about, actually, you know what? I wrote this down. I'm going to make this a little bit easier on myself.
I totally feel for you, though. Like, you write this book, and then you're like, how do I condense it into 200 words?
Yes, you know, it's amazing. And it's like there's so much blood, sweat, and tears in this. But this is the blurb that I wrote for it. What if you prepared for the wrong destiny? Before her 6th birthday, Anali had 2 names, After being rescued from Natas, a shape-shifting warlord, she is named Amelia so that she can hide on Earth until the restoration of the interdimensional portals that join the worlds. Amelia dedicated her life to her prophetic destiny. Though called to end Natas and his brother's march of terror across the 36 worlds, she is also a blood child, born under a devastating curse. When she finally returns home to face Natas, she discovers that all of her training has been to no avail. Outmatched and outflanked with a curse that's set to destroy her life and erase her identity, Amelia must fight to save her world and what little hope of a future she has left while preparing for the destiny she must actually fulfill.
I love it. I think it's really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Baller.
I'm really
Butler.
excited about this. This is the, you know how you have passion projects that you just love, and you probably should have let it go. Like, this was actually the very first fantasy novel I ever started writing. And it has grown. Currently, the series is over 2.5 million words long.
What?
Yeah, this, like I said,
What?
when I go into these stages, like, I just write and I write and I write, but then I didn't save up enough money for editing. So now I decided to do the double release of the first 2 books. And I actually have 4 other of the books drafted, and they're going to go in for edits and such. And then there's about 25 novellas and short stories. But going back to that imposter syndrome, even though, yeah, I've been working as a freelance writer, and had had several stories published and such, I just didn't have the confidence to publish this on my own quite yet. It could always be a little better. And
You're from a marketing standpoint, you're doing what I wish I could do, and that is wait until the entire series is finished. I can't do it. I won't do it. But you're doing the right thing.
And it's not even done yet. The 2.5 million, it's not done.
Your read-through rate. Oh man, the money you could make. I wish I could do that. It's all about that read-through, all about that funnel, and you got 2.5 million words. I can't. You know what? Put my name on them.
I'm scared. You want what? You want your name on them?
Yeah.
Well, I'll come talk to you for marketing. I'll put you in there as my marketing consultant.
Yeah, right.
Move past this terror of I've got to tell people about this. But yeah, this is also the fantasy series that I wanted to read when I was starting when I was a young girl up through my teenage years, and just never found. So it has all of the things that I love from fantasy that I just couldn't uncover, and to a certain extent still haven't. And so that's kind of it's really exciting to be actually on the other side and looking at this instead of I'm going to just completely rewrite this all over again. I'm going to let it go.
You brought up a question for Andy that I've been wondering. Andy, so it's important to write to market and write with tropes in mind. Now, let's say you're a big fantasy reader. You love fantasy. If you write a book with all the stuff you'd like to see as a reader, everything you think is cool, isn't that hitting the tropes?
Well,
so I feel like you did that with Blade of the Destroyer.
You know, I actually wrote Blade of the Destroyer just thinking about this badass character, and then sort of fixed it according to my beta reader comments. So I'm probably the last person to talk to about writing to market. I am trying to do it now with the stuff that I'm currently working on. But basically, hitting the tropes is about creating a familiar structure or a familiar book that readers will recognize. And that familiarity already establishes a positive association in their mind. So you've got the uniqueness of your story with the familiarity of the structure, you know, the 10-act structure, you know, the 3-act structure, sorry, the 10 steps of a hero's journey. And so you're combining the familiar with the new, and it's the perfect mix to hook readers, the people who, you know, who devour stuff. So it's definitely something that's recommended. Now, hitting those tropes, every genre has their own tropes. So, you know, you can hit 2, you can hit 5, you can hit 50. What matters is that you're finding, like, the writing to market is finding niches where you can flourish, where there's not a lot of competition.
Okay. Is it, I'm going to take a little break here, and I'm going to show our viewers what I have. I have a little surprise for our viewers, and then we can get back on track. And that is, The Fences Fiends podcast shirt, the official shirt.
Very
Copyright.
nice.
Very
Yeah.
cool. Is there anything on the back, Stevie?
There isn't, just white.
Oh.
That costs more, but we could do something there. I just really wanted to wear it around town because I love the image. And but yeah, Andy, we could talk about that for sure. I was just excited to put it on camera, but I couldn't find the right time without it being inappropriate. So, we're talking about depression, like, Jessica, hold on. Oh, look at my chest.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
One of the fears that I'm confronting as an author or as a person this year is self-publishing. When I self-published my Atlantis novel, I got some positive feedback and then I got some negative feedback. So it was mixed. Like the reviews were better than worse. But then as I was working on Blade of the Destroyer, I was like, okay, so I need a team of people, an editor and people to help me make this product great. So I went with the publisher for that series. And then with the Queen of Thieves series, I also went with the publisher. But now I'm stepping out on my own to self-publish something again. And there is this gut-wrenching fear or the anxiety that I'm going to do the wrong thing, because there's no one telling me, okay, you should release it at this schedule, or here's a cover that we've designed for you that hits the market, the standards. So I'm doing everything myself. I'm doing the editing, and I'm hiring an editor, obviously, but sort of I'm the final say. And there is that anxiety that I'm not going to do it right. And so that's something that I'm just forcing myself not to think about it, because I want to take that next step and try something new in my career as an author. So that's a fear that I'm fighting this year. But as for a fear that I'm going to conquer this week, I don't know. I'm going to have to think about that. But Stevie, next week we are going to talk about the fears that we conquered.
I can't wait to hear what you guys do.
Well, I think my fear will finally be putting the 4 territories on pre-order, because I have perfection paralysis. I really don't want it to go out yet. I feel like, just let me pass through it 2 more times. This piece of dialogue doesn't work, but everybody's telling me
definitely do it.
I think maybe I will.
And that's the fear for you to conquer this week. Is do that.
Release it on a Tuesday, right?
I've heard that.
Yeah, it's releasing on Tuesday. I've read it in 2 books, so you did it, Andy.
My publisher released it on Tuesday. Releasing on Tuesday is to hit the New York Times and USA Today bestseller lists, but for like a launch, often Fridays are really good.
Well, so I guess Friday should be better than, because I doubt I'm going to hit the USA Today or New York Times bestseller list.
The purpose of doing a Friday is you take advantage of people looking for something to do with their weekend. So let's say you have a weekend long launch party, starts on Friday. You hit a lot of those people who are, who finished the work week early. Maybe they finished Thursday night, or they got a couple of hour shifts Friday morning, but then they're on the weekend and they're looking for something to do. That's the beauty of a Friday. Now Tuesday, you have the whole week to hit, to keep the rankings on Amazon and stuff like that.
Okay, we'll have to discuss this further. Another big, I forgot another event another big thing for me, something cool, a piece of news about Stevie Collier. I have a up-running series now on Wattpad called Cambion.
Oh.
Yes, and I really love the Wattpad community. It's a bunch of writers, a bunch of readers. I highly suggest both of you get on there and look at it. I mean, there's so much to do as a self-publisher, so Wattpad might not be your thing, because, I mean, you could be doing something else, but I enjoy being able to get on there and actually discover write instead of plot. I plot so I can write faster, but I do 200 words a day of discovery writing, and then I basically just upload it on Wattpad every Friday, 800,000 words for a chapter. And
yeah, I used to be on Wattpad.
What do you think about it?
Well, trying to keep it basic, I think that it can be a very good community. I met some absolutely incredible authors on there. I built up a little bit of a following and worked as an ambassador. But my issue with Wattpad, ultimately I decided to step down, and I am no longer active on Wattpad as the lack of transparency and in protecting authors. There were some hacks into the system that they did not take steps very quickly to rectify, and then did not inform the authors. And then I practice intellectual property as part of my law practice.
Oh, okay.
And what I do for pro bono work is I work with authors who've had their work stolen and uploaded, say, to Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And so I see a fair bit of this. And so I ended up diverging paths with Wattpad because, you know, they have this huge community, and they had some people were giving bad advice on copyright and giving misinformation. And if you're going to have that large of a community and it turns out that people can just go in and do a complete text grab of your story and download it as a text file or something and immediately upload it, that's a problem that people need to be aware of so that they can protect themselves. It's not don't use it, but you need to take precautions to take care of yourself and your work.
So you worked for Wattpad?
Ambassadors are volunteers. They don't get paid. But yeah, it was kind of an unofficial. I actually helped run the fantasy community, not the official one, but the Wattpad profile, which was a much smaller community, and I would do writing contests and stuff like that. So oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, if Andy and I have any legal issues, we just come to Jessica Fry.
Well, you can come talk to me. I will probably recommend you to see someone else if it's something that's not outside, that is not inside my wheelhouse. But hopefully, you don't need my services.
Yes, hopefully not. Wow. Okay. Cool.
But yeah, the main thing is just be proactive and looking for your stories and be. I mean, I've had my stories stolen multiple times. Just dealt with it a couple weeks ago. Some person took it.
Wow.
Yeah, the thing is, they don't look for quality, so never be flattered that they took your story. They're just taking it and they just upload it to Amazon and try to make whatever they can, and they'll probably do a lot of stories. So,
dang.
Yeah, you just have to be aware of it. Register your copyright. Do take that step. That makes it easier for you and harder for them.
We are just learning all sorts of things in this podcast today. I definitely need to register my copyright. I don't know about you, Andy. You probably have already done that.
I'm gonna pretend that I have.
Yeah.
There's also something that's really helpful if you're putting work on Wattpad, and actually I'm getting ready to put this article up on my site at Wattpad. Unpublished collections. And you don't have to be a U.S. citizen to file with the Copyright Office, but an unpublished collection, it costs I think about $45 by the time all is said and done. It's unlimited, so you can take a work in progress, all of your short stories, everything that you're going to post online, once a year, put them together, give it a table of contents, and submit it. And you submit it to the Copyright Office, and you get it officially copyrighted, and it gives you a little bit of added protection. Because when you're dealing with online booksellers and such like that, it can become very drawn out and frustrating trying to prove ownership. But when you have that certificate, it makes it move so much faster. And it also keeps them from registering your work too, which not too many credits should do, but it's a possibility. I studied a little bit of that in business law, not about ebooks, but about people registering trademarks before the other person and stuff, which I found fascinating. I didn't know people could do that, and apparently you can. And I raised my hand, and the teacher's like, "What is this here?" I was like, "Why do people do that?" And he's like, "People are scum." He's an old man. So, first in time.
Andy, should we go to the excerpt?
Yes. Well, first we have the word of the day. I have a great word of the day.
Okay, go for it. I had to back up.
Okay, the word of the day is Cimmerian. Cimmerian. Now, anybody who's read Conan the Barbarian will recognize that name because he is a Cimmerian. And that relates to sort of the country or the race where he was from. But it's actually an ancient nomadic people who overran Asia Minor in the 7th century BC. But the context that we're using it here is very dark or gloomy. John Milton used it in one of his works as under ebon shades in dark Cimmerian desert to ever dwell.
Cimmerian. It sounds
dark or gloomy.
And it starts with an S. Excuse me.
C.
Oh, okay. I see it now. I don't know. It sounds like a religious word to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's
Seraphim.
got that context. It's like Stygian, another word related to the Styx, the river Styx from Greek mythology. It's this very dark thing, gloomy or forbidding. Both of these words, they have the very similar meaning, and they're both proper nouns, Stygian and Cimmerian. So you can't use them in fantasy, but you can use them in, urban fantasy or anything where they have these Greek and Egyptian and of course the Legend of Conan.
I love it. That's a way better word than I was going to do. The reason being is I think we actually have done the one I'm thinking of, but I'll keep it to myself in case we use it next week. So I like it. That's really nice. Your words are so much they're so
much gooder. So much gooder.
I was gonna say weller, but gooder's better. So this excerpt is from your first book, Identity Revealed.
Yes, it is.
And is there any context our listeners should know before we dive into it?
Let's see. Well, the context would be that Amelia is the protagonist, and she has pulled off grew up on Earth. She came back, and she brought a 9mm handgun, tried shooting the villains, and it hasn't worked because they can heal. And Amelia is a Nolly. However, no time has passed since she's gone, so they don't know that she's a Nolly. So that is
a Nolly.
And Nolly is the little girl. It was her name when she was a little girl.
Okay, and now she's Amelia.
Yes.
Okay.
And then I should probably tell you pronunciation if we're going to read this.
Oh, I'll get them wrong anyway.
Well, and it's funny. I actually work it into the story. There's a pronunciation guide so that
cool.
readers don't have a problem, but it's not in this section. So the AAQAR is Hakar.
Hakar.
And then the WROOTH is Roath.
Roath.
And then I think then the NAATOS is Natas.
And third Nalenth?
Oh, third Nalenth. Yes, that's how you would pronounce that.
Okay, cool. All right, and the way Andy and I usually do it is we have the guest author assign these our parts. Andy hates doing this, but I love doing this for our listeners and viewers. He hates it.
Don't worry, Andy. This is one of my moments of fear for the day because I'm not good with this at all. So okay.
She believed me. I'm messing around. This is one of Andy's favorite parts.
Oh, is it? Well,
this is the reason that we started the podcast. Is so I
is it?
Yeah.
Let's see. Well,
he loves being posh.
Ah, very fun. Okay. So you want me to assign it?
Yes. Tell us who to read.
I'm going to turn on the light real quick.
Okay. I have to make a decision. Well, Andy, if you really like the reading and doing voices, do you want to do Roath?
Sure.
He has a fair bit of talking. He gets to be fairly dramatic.
And what kind of voice does he have?
Roath is a trickster. He is probably the least threatening, but he is a little bit unstable. So he would be slick and smooth and charismatic, but there is a slight bit of insanity hiding behind there.
Oh, perfect. I'm gonna have fun with this.
I figured you might. Then let's see. How do you handle the narration?
Whoever does it.
Okay. So I'll do the narration, and then Stevie, do you want to voice Amelia?
Sure. Yeah,
right,
I've done women before.
All right.
I've read women before. Excuse me. Oh God.
Okay, moving on, and then we have briefly Hakar and Natas, and I'm trying to. So I think Roath and Natas wind up having more interplay. So Stevie, if you want to voice Natas, and then Andy, if you want to voice Hakar, that'd be great.
Okay. What kind of a person is Hakar?
Hakar is suicidally depressed, but highly intelligent and very quiet.
I can do that. Then, do any of them have accents? Like in your head, what did you hear?
In my head, I would go neutral educated. And then Stevie, for you to know, Natas is actually the primary antagonist, so he's the most aggressive.
Oh, good. Is he Is he just a male, just a regular human?
No, all three of them are shapeshifters.
Okay, so I'll do something dark then.
Yeah, he's my primary antagonist. They're also brothers, and you should know that they are very close to one another. They're not antagonistic to each other at all. So they have dark humor with each other, but they would never hurt one another. Seriously.
Okay.
So, all right.
Okay.
I'm going to scroll back up, and then I will start reading. Amelia had reached the bottom of the third hill leading up to the peak. No sign of the mercenaries or Hakar, or a dragon roar bellowed out. Roath soared behind her, wings spread wide. Amelia ground her teeth and banked toward the forest, but the wind was with Roath. His massive black shadow passed over her and shot ahead. With a loud crash, he landed in front of her, the ground shaking under him. Amelia stopped short. Her boots dug into the steep hill, and for a moment she almost fell.
Surely you weren't planning on leaving?
Roath said. He returned to his state of rest.
Oh, I couldn't possibly stay.
Amelia stepped back, looking toward the ridge above the ravine. At most, she had minutes.
I'm just going to be on my way.
If by on your way you mean back to my brothers, then by all means.
Roath half bowed.
If not, well, I'm sure you can figure out the rest.
If you ever want to see a nail again, you'd better not threaten me.
Amelia forced herself to laugh.
See, I know where she is, and if I don't cooperate, you'll never find her again.
I'm sure that's not true. She is the third Nayland, and more. She can't help but come back to us. If not now, then soon. And as you've pointed out, you know where she is.
Roath's tone was almost playful. He cupped his hand over his chin.
Of course, you only need your tongue and your mouth to tell us where she is. Your legs may not be your greatest asset, but I'll assume you prefer to keep them.
Amelia aimed the gun at him.
Try it and I'll shoot you.
Shoot me?
Roath's eyes widened and his smile broadened.
Did you miss the part where I arrived as a dragon? That gun doesn't even fire lasers or energy beams.
Amelia glanced around. There was no way she could make it to safety, even if she did shoot him. New plan.
Maybe not, but I can still take you. Why couldn't I?
Well, let me think. I'm taller, stronger, have more weapons, and, oh, did I mention, I can turn into a dragon.
I've got a gun.
And I can turn into a dragon.
I've also got a dagger.
Amelia lifted her chin.
Dragon.
Chuckling, Roath pointed toward himself.
Do you think that scares me? I think the real reason you keep pointing that out is because you're afraid to face me like a man.
Amelia aimed at his leg.
So, if you're going to fight me as a dragon, do it. But if you do, I'll know you're a coward.
Roath laughed at her openly.
Am I? And who are you to say this? You're barely more than a child. You don't have a prayer against me, even in my human form.
I don't need your prayers.
Amelia shot him in the knee once, then twice. She then tore the sashes from around her shoulders and leaped onto his back. Twisting the sashes around his neck, she tightened them. If she could cut off his airflow, he couldn't shift shapes or fight. Roath pushed up from the ground.
Well, aren't you the little bundle of fire and brimstone?
Amelia knotted the sash around her hand and jerked it tight.
I'm not going to kill you. You're my hostage. Now stay down.
She shoved him between the shoulders, but he barely moved. The nausea that twisted in her stomach worsened. Something was wrong.
Amelia, if you were hoping to escape, you went the wrong way.
Roath grabbed the tunic around his neck, not even struggling to breathe. Then he stood. Amelia pulled back. His throat didn't buckle under pressure.
All right.
Roath said when she remained stuck to his back.
That's enough. I'm not in the habit of giving people rides.
Get back down.
Amelia wound the fabric around her wrist again.
I'll shoot you again if you don't cooperate.
You said you wanted me to face you like a man. In case you thought otherwise, no man has ever jumped on my back and then clung there like a baby wasp at monkey.
You're my hostage. Don't make me shoot you again.
She pressed the gun to his neck.
This is no longer amusing, Amelia. Get off, or I'll show you why one doesn't jump on a Voltrian's back.
I said get down.
Amelia tensed.
I don't want to hurt you anymore, Roath, but I will.
I'll certainly remember that.
Roath strained his neck back. Amelia shot him in the shoulder, but the bullet deflected. His shoulders and back became scaled as he returned to the crimson dragon form. Amelia gasped, her grip still tight on the now taut sash. Letting go put her in danger, but hanging on wasn't. Roath leaped up, punching the air down with his massive wings as he soared upward. The blast of wind against Amelia's face almost knocked her off. Hanging on was even harder when he suddenly flipped upside down. The sash pulled tight against her wrist, but before it tore or her wrist broke, he spun around again. The world passed in a blur, the wind whipping at her face. Roath kept changing forms. He transformed from the massive crimson dragon into a slim blue feathered dragon, then into a four-headed gold dragon. The transformations were smooth and effortless, happening so quickly she could barely comprehend them. With each transformation, Amelia thought she wouldn't be able to hold on any longer. Surely the sash would snap or she would fall. But no. Roath soared into the sky, throwing his head back and roaring. The sound deafened Amelia. She ducked her head down against his neck, no longer thinking, only clinging. She needed to stop him, somehow, but all she could do was hold on. The fabric cut into her hand, the wind blasted her face, and only terror and adrenaline gave her the strength to hold on. Then all at once, Roath stopped short, drop landing on Volney's peak. Amelia rocked forward, almost slamming her chin into the back of his head. She gasped in a deep breath, her heart racing. Her hair hung over her face, wild and unkempt, covering her mouth. Roath shifted from the sleek silver dragon to a state of rest.
I think she's feeling a little less hostile now, aren't you, dear heart?
Roath grinned as he looked back at her. That horrible plummeting feeling filled Amelia's body. She couldn't let go. Her arms and legs were still there, but they were wrapped as tight around him as she could. Somehow she'd even held on to the gun. Not that it was doing much good now. Natas, fully healed, stood to the side with Hakar. Hakar held her tablet, sliding his hand across the screen with confident ease. Natas didn't appear surprised by it at all and was discussing something on the screen with Hakar. They knew about guns, lasers, and tablets. How was this even possible?
You can get off now.
Roath jostled Amelia, but she didn't budge.
All right.
He nodded.
Assistance would appear to be necessary.
Natas strode toward them, the spear once more collapsed and hanging at his side. He pointed at Amelia.
Get down now.
Amelia's mouth was dry, her thoughts jumbled, but she found the grip in her fingers once more and pointed the gun at Roath's head.
Your brother is my hostage. I have a special bullet here. I don't want to hurt you, but I will. If you don't let me go and swear you will not pursue me, I will use it.
Her hands were cold and stiff, her coordination less than strong. Natas's eyes narrowed.
Roath, are you a hostage?
Roath chuckled.
Not so much.
Yes, you are.
Amelia snapped.
Believe me, you don't want to see what this bullet does to your head. Perhaps I do.
Natas said.
If you would like to demonstrate, please. I await.
You wound me, brother.
Roath feigned pain.
I think she plans to do that.
Natas nodded toward Amelia.
Go on. Show me. Is it made of something more substantive than metal and copper?
Amelia pointed the gun at Natas.
Maybe I'll shoot you instead.
Hakar sighed.
Stop antagonizing the girl.
You are a Neab. What is that again?
Nieb, sorry.
Neab. You are a Neab. But even so, you are trying my patience.
Natas said.
If you are going to shoot me, then do it.
Amelia squeezed the trigger. The shot pierced Natas between the eyes.
Oh, dear heart.
Roath shook his head.
That was not very well thought out.
Amelia pointed the gun back at him.
Do you want me to shoot you again?
I'm fairly certain we've established that only annoys us.
Roath said. Natas stood. He dashed the blood away from his face.
Climb down now.
Amelia shook her head. As awkward as it was clinging to Roath, she at least didn't have to worry about him as much. He could injure her, but he couldn't sneak up on her, and her being on Roath certainly limited what Natas and Hakar could do.
I don't think so.
Amelia said.
It's not like things are going to get worse for me if I stay up here. Oh, but they can.
Natas said.
You see, it is not much whether you die. It is not so much whether you die. That's essentially a given at this point. The question is how you die. You could die quickly or slowly, painfully or more painfully, quickly or slowly. How you die is what you get to decide right now. Roath, drop her. You look ridiculous.
Roath held up his hands.
I have nothing to do with this. The only other thing I can do is waste her. I don't think you'll get much out of her after that. Be still, both of you.
Hakar said.
The girl should not be at issue right now. She is here. She is restrained.
He glanced up.
More or less, Inale is more important. Now, this tablet has a number of documents and files, including her own journalings. So far, no mention of Inale.
Do you really think I would talk about anything important in a journal that I didn't password protect?
Amelia asked tightly.
Perhaps. Tell us where Inale is.
Hakar shut the tablet off.
She has a destiny to fulfill. It is better that she is with those who understand it than with those who would lock her away.
No.
Amelia steadied herself.
It's better for her to be free. You must leave her, her family, and her people alone. Amelia, I may be persuaded to let you live.
Natas said.
You are a Neeb, and I admit that when it comes to them, I am more merciful than I should be. If you bring Inale here, I will let you help raise her. So cooperate and live. Otherwise, I will lock you in a dungeon filled with hook-fanged spiders and let them feast on your living flesh.
A spasm of fear shot through Amelia. She had tried to remove her fear of spiders by training with scorpions, tarantulas, bird-eating spiders, and more, but nothing on earth compared with the wolf-sized spiders. Her shoulders tensed, her muscles tightened.
So, what will it be?
Natas asked. He moved closer. Amelia tried to turn Roath around using his hair.
I'm not a horse, dear heart.
Roath gave his head a firm shake but stayed in place.
5 seconds to talk before you'll be on your way to Palfadrin in a sack along with the rest of the spider bait.
Natas said. Amelia's mouth had gone dry. Maybe there was another way she could buy time.
All right, but I'll have to show you where she is.
A bear roared. Out of the forest at the base of the fifth hill leading up the peak poured 24 Yaman on their armored Bruins. Relief flooded Amelia. Backup was here.
Ooh, very nice.
Thank you.
I loved it.
Great ending to that scene, yeah.
I'm so glad
Yes.
you enjoyed it. You guys did a fantastic job with the voices.
We are for hire for audiobooks.
I am very happy to know this. Thank you.
You know what? I was so into the story. I felt like I was going to forget when my part was coming.
Oh, well, it was a lot of fun getting to hear it too. This is actually, my husband and I, when I'm polishing the scenes, I'll have him read with me so that I can hear it. And we've had a lot of fun with that. But this was the first time having someone outside of that do that. So that was really cool.
That's cool. That's an interesting way to edit a book. It's very good to hear it out loud. I hear, but I don't have anyone to do that with. So I'm a lonely man.
Oh,
no, I have somebody.
Yeah, that method, and then another one that I found. This scene was 2 chapters, and so I trimmed it significantly. Unfortunately, there were a couple little errors that slipped in, but there's more to it. I figured we didn't need quite as much setting, and some of the stuff that wasn't important, just tighten it up. But for edits and stuff, I found the pen tap method is really helpful, where you print it out and you just take a pen and you tap each word, and it really helps if you have dyslexia to see what's actually there and not just what you think is there.
That's an interesting idea. Yeah, so your eyes don't just glaze over it.
Yeah, I have a terrible time with that one.
Well, Andy, it looks like we're 5 minutes over already.
Oh, wow, time flew.
It really does every time. So, and I'm going to try and be quiet for this ending. So, Jessica Fry, where can your fans find you?
Well, you can find me at my website, jessicabfry.com or jmbutlerauthor.com. Both of them go to the same place.
Nice.
Then you can also find me on Twitter. I use the handle Jessica B. Fry, and I use JM Butler for my Facebook page. So you can find me there. And yeah, feel free to say hi.
Awesome. And Andy, what are we having next week?
Well, before we hit next week, we've got a special Saturday episode of Dungeons and Dragons played by the Giant and the Gnome. We've even got our characters, the Giant and the Gnome, showing up. I'm going to be a giant barbarian because that's who I am. And Stevie, you are a gnome.
Gnome cleric. Yes, and I have a drinking problem, which is weird for a lawfully just person. So lawfully
you were talking about your character.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean both, but I mean, come on now.
That mug he keeps drinking out of is not actually coffee.
It's not.
Yeah. So we've got Joshua Robertson and JC Boyd from Rollcraft. They have actually created a short 2-hour adventure for us to play the Ale and Ancestors adventure. So we're going to be playing with them. JC Boyd's going to be the dungeon master. Joshua's going to be joining us as a fellow adventurer, and fingers crossed that we survive long enough to complete the mission. But if not, we're going to have a hell of a fun time dying.
We will. we're gonna go out swinging.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah. So, Andy, should I just go ahead and close this off?
Yes, absolutely. Well, just one little message. I was going to say this at the beginning, but a new story of mine has just been released Tuesday. In the Elementals Urban Fantasy Anthology. I know it's not technically the kind of fantasy that we do here, but it's pretty awesome. It's touching on a blind girl who is given this angelic dagger and the ability to see the fire of life within people. So it's touching on what it's like to live with blindness and what you're willing to do, to get your sight back and stuff like that. It was a really fun story to write. Go check it out on Amazon and my website and all of that.
Is it the skull image, the skull cover?
No, that's the different Not Damaged one. That's coming out in October. This one was just released on Tuesday.
Okay.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, very nice, man. Cool. And did we discuss next Thursday what's going on?
Next Thursday, I have to, let me just check real fast. I sent the email and I don't remember who I sent it to.
I'm getting a haircut, everybody. Next Wednesday, they're going to trim my beard, so no worries there. That's one of my updates.
That's good.
Yeah. That's good.
I'm not sure who the guest is for next week, but
no problem.
Oh, Angela. Yes, Angela J. Ford. She is awesome. She's a fellow fantasy author. She does more epic high fantasy, I think, than the dark stuff that we write. But her book is awesome. She just released a new book recently, so it's going to be awesome to talk about it.
Sweet. All right, well, that is everything here on the Fantasy Fiends podcast. Jessica Fry, J.M. Butler, we want to thank you so much for being here and being on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
We wish you the best of luck publishing your 2.4 million words. Everybody check her book out around November 13th, right?
Mm-hmm. And I have some books up on Amazon right now that they can check out too. Definitely.
So go hit her up, buy her books. We really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for watching or listening to the Fantasy Fiends podcast. Please like and subscribe us on YouTube. That really helps us out. YouTube's a very hard channel to be to get recognized on. So please like and subscribe. That helps us out tremendously. We will see you next week. Have a great weekend.
Right.
Go see it.
All right.
Yes.
I'm going to tomorrow. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys. Bye.